Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, and today we're starting a vlog where I read books about cults. Cults are something that I've always been interested in. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I know a lot about kind of true crime cult things, but I haven't read a ton of books about cults, especially fictional books. So I figured, okay, let's do it. A lot of people have strong opinions about cult fiction, so I want to see where I stand. I want to figure this out. So I have 3 books that I want to read for this vlog. The first one I knew I was going to read is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead because I loved In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. So I have to read this one. And then another one that I've always wanted to read is When She Returned by Lucinda. This one has kind of controversial reviews. So I'm interested to find where I fall with that book. And then so I started looking for a third book. What's another book that I should read that's about cults? And after doing some research, I ended up landing on Within These Walls by Ania Ahlborn. I read Brother by her recently and really enjoyed it. And so I was like, you know what? I'll read another Ania Ahlborn. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what do I want from a cult book? Like what am I looking for here? And so I've been thinking about what makes a good cult book, what makes cults scary, and what is it about cults that are so fascinating to us? So the scary thing about cults is that nobody thinks they would ever get sucked into one. However, people do. Where is that gray area? And what makes people think that they would never be sucked into one when in fact people actually do? So there's a disconnect here. So I started researching what characteristics of a person draws them to join something like a cult. So I've come up with a list that I found of characteristics of people who are highly susceptible to cults. And it's a list that you might not expect. First of all, most people who join a cult tend to have a higher level of education, which you would not expect. I wouldn't expect that. So they're smart. They have a weaker spiritual background. They have higher financial success. They are a younger age, and they have few time constraints. So these are people who are often higher educated and successful that are perhaps looking for some kind of meaning in their life. They're bored, they've hit the milestones in life, and then they're thinking, what for? What is this for? What is life? This kind of existential crisis. And then some more in-depth personality characteristics are, these are people who want to feel validated, people who are seeking some kind of identity. They're seeking meaning in life. Also, interestingly, they tend to blame others when things go wrong for them. And they tend to have some kind of residual or built-up anger, which I found interesting. And then on top of that, they have a low self-worth. When you think about it, it makes sense. They might be susceptible to some kind of enigmatic, charismatic person who's going to guide them to a place of self-fulfillment. So, what am I looking for in these books? There are 3 things that I want to find that I'm going to kind of evaluate within these books. The first one is I want a believable or realistic ideology. I want these cults to believe in something that would make a normal person say, yes, if I followed this, I would be more fulfilled in my life. So I feel like it always has to start out someplace that sounds realistic. Isn't just straight up like, I worship the devil. It has to come from a place where this group is trying to make it a better world. And I think that's where that fine line is, because a lot of these cults like NXIVM or Scientology, oh, I might get in trouble for that one, but they have ideologies where you're like, yes, you want to make the world a better place for the generations to come. You want to do this. And I think as far as like heroes and villains, that's a fine line as well, because a lot of times a good villain believes really strongly in something and they want that for good reason, but the tactics that they take and the behaviors that they perform in order to make those things happen are what sends them over that line. I want them to believe in something that makes sense, that is coming from a place of genuine kindness, of wanting to make things better. Secondly, for every cult, you must have an enigmatic leader, someone who is charming, probably good looking, someone who is, in all outward appearances, some ideal person, is very smart, outwardly appealing to the masses. So I'm going to be looking for that as well. I'm going to be looking for this figure to be charming, believable, manipulative. And then third, what I'm looking for in this is the kind of fear factor, that line that's crossed between kind of social gathering and cult. Whatever makes it creepy. How far does it go? How far is it taken? How much does it creep me out? So those are the three things that I'm looking for. A realistic ideology, a manipulative, enigmatic leader, and to get the creeps from this. So there we have it. I currently am reading Within These Walls. This book is longer than I'm used to, so I am halfway through it so far. It's starting to get a little bit slow in the middle, but let me tell you what it's about. Basically, we're following this guy, Lucas. He is a true crime writer, and he's had like a hit in the past at the peak of his career, but now he's kind of being forgotten. He's outside of the limelight. He's not making the money he used to make. He's having trouble with his marriage, and he has a 12-year-old daughter who is being influenced by this guy she has a crush on. And so she's kind of getting into like darker things. She's kind of dressing like a goth. She's doing things that she never did before. I will say she reads a lot older than 12. I would say from like the way she reads, she was probably like 14 or 15. But anyway, so this guy, Lucas, he gets a letter from this cult leader, Jeffrey Halcombe. Jeffrey led this cult, I think it was in the 80s, if I remember correctly, convinced 10 people, I believe, to kill themselves, including this one woman, Aubrey, who was pregnant at the time. So she, in fact, killed herself and her baby. And he has not spoken to any media, any reporters, nothing in years. And he writes this letter to Lucas and he says, look, I read your book. I want to tell you my story. I want to just come out with it, but I have some conditions. I want you to move to the house that all of this went down in, the same house where all of these people died. I need you to live there. If you do that, I will give you exclusive interview access and I will tell you my entire story. And so Lucas is thinking, oh my God, this is my chance. I'm gonna get my career back. I'm gonna get back on top. He's having issues with his wife. They decide to split. He moves into this house for 8 weeks with his 12-year-old daughter, and then things start happening. Now, I'm not sure if this book is going to be more about like this house and this kind of quote unquote haunted house. If it's haunted, if it's not, or like supernatural aspects, or if it's gonna be more about the cult. Like I said, I'm halfway through right now. Things are happening. So far, I'm really enjoying the character work. I loved the character work in Brother, and so I'm really happy to find that that was not a fluke. Like it's carrying over into this book. These characters are really, really well done. Basically, we're getting chapters of the present day of Lucas and his daughter moving into this house, him trying to figure out what happened back then. And then we're also getting past timeline chapters where we're seeing this cult form. I haven't gotten a whole lot from this leader yet, this Jeffrey Halcombe. So I don't know a whole lot about that situation and like his manipulations, etc. But I am liking it so far, although it's a little slow right now. I'm liking it so far. The daughter, I can't remember her name. She calls herself V. She's a total hypochondriac. I completely relate to her. And she even mentioned that she got this from watching House. Same. Like now that I've seen that show and I've seen all of these like random rare diseases, it's always a thought in my mind of like, what if I have that? What do I have? Will I wake up tomorrow? What if I have the rarest disease and nobody knows? So she's kind of on that same boat. I love that they mentioned that. And then when she faces these situations where she has this fear, like she changed her whole personality for this guy that she has a crush on, right? And so she's pretending at the very least to be into the occult, into like gothic things, into true crime, into murders, into things that we're into. You know what I'm saying? But when she actually comes face to face with some things that are terrifying, she points out how different it is, how you can be interested in this thing, and yet if something actually happens to you, like it's so different. And I think that's really relatable for people who enjoy reading thrillers and horror and things like that as well. But let me tell you, I will never be that person who something is happening to and no one knows about and they die. Like that, okay, like the new Unsolved Mysteries, that first episode about the guy and he was totally happy with his wife and he's super happy and then he jumps off the top of that like old hotel building and nobody knows why. Like he got the phone call and he rushed out and they're like, did he jump? Was he pushed? What happened? He had all these secrets. Was he writing a movie? Like what? That will never be me. Because if I have a thought, If something happens to me, if something scares me, I am telling people. I refuse to let that be me. And those people that are always like, where it's the center of the plot, there are these things happening and they're just like they're afraid to look silly by telling somebody, or like it sounds paranormal and they're like, no, they'll think I'm losing my mind. No, I'm gonna fucking tell them. I will tell you. I don't care how crazy I look. I'm gonna say it. I will say it because I refuse to be that person. Yeah, I'll get back to you when I finish this book. It's been a couple days. I've finished Within These Walls. So let's talk about it. One thing that didn't quite sit well with me for the whole book was that V, the daughter, was so young. So young, 12. I kept doubting myself, like, is she actually 12? Did I mishear that? Did I make that up in my mind? No, she's actually 12. She has a huge part in this story, and a lot of it is about this connection between her and her dad. I do think the character work was great, but I didn't like that she was so young. I wish that she had been older. So that kind of made it a little bit harder to believe. Like, I understand the boy craziness and she's feeling rejected by both of her parents. Like, nobody pays attention to her, nobody loves her. As we're getting information about this cult from the past, I guess I assumed that most of the people in the cult were probably in their like early 20s, you know? It's made very clear that they're all runaways. They're all kind of outcasts. People who had families and who have run away and then found each other. That doesn't really fit our research of the kind of people that end up in cults. Although I suppose that can't necessarily be true, because think of the Manson family. Like, I don't think everyone in there was well off. Maybe they were, though. That was a different time, though. That was the 70s. It was this kind of hippie culture. So I suppose there are exceptions to the rule, but just didn't quite fit with my idea of what I was looking for, right? How come the cult leader guy, we never fully understand what he actually believes in, other than he thinks that he can give people eternal life. And this idea of people having eternal life is what convinced all these people to kill themselves. It does blend true crime and supernatural, so I guess that supernatural element was something that I wasn't really anticipating going into this, although I suppose it kind of depends on your belief systems, because you might not view it as supernatural if you are inclined towards, you know, spiritual religious beliefs, I guess. It's subjective. I don't think this is going to be one of my next favorite books, but I do see a pattern here. After having read only 2 of Ania Ahlborn's books, it's heavy character work, which I appreciate. But also, I like where she took the ending here. And I think that might be kind of a controversial idea. I think some people might not like the ending, but I did enjoy the ending, though I still don't think it was as good as Brother. So let's go over our criteria. I'm gonna rate each of these out of 5. We'll add up the total score, and then at the end, we'll see which book wins. Our first point is the ideology. Does it make sense? Is it believable? And for me, this really isn't that believable. First of all, it's not fully explained about what they actually believe at all, other than they believe in eternal life, which can be interpreted in a million different ways. And I really wish I had gone deeper into this. So for this, I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5. Next, we have this enigmatic leader. For this point, she hit the nail on the head. This guy, Jeffrey Holcomb, fit everything we thought he should fit. He's this super handsome, attractive man. He basically makes all of the women weak in the knees. He comes off as really endearing and caring and full of this love and joy. And then we eventually see this darker side of him. So I really did appreciate that. So for this, I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5. And then for the third point, we have the fear factor. The creepy jeepies. Did this book scare me? How do I feel like it fell in that category? And for this one, I feel like it was kind of middle of the road. Like, it wasn't that scary. I wish we had gotten more into the, like I said, the ideology of this cult, and I feel like that would have added to that fear factor. Although we did have this kind of supernatural or paranormal aspect that did add to that, but it's not necessarily what I was looking for. I'm gonna give this one 3 out of 5. So total for this book, we have 10 out of 15 points. So yeah, we'll see how that holds up as we read more books. That being said, I actually have started the next book. I've started When She Returned by Lucinda. And again, having read quite a few of Lucinda Berry's books, I'm definitely getting some familiar feelings, familiar descriptions. I'm feeling like she understands the psyche of these people more than Ania Ahlborn does, as far as the nature of the cult goes. So let me tell you a little bit about what this book is about. So this family, mother is Kate, father is Scott. They're high school sweethearts. They've been best friends since they were 9 years old. They have this like ridiculous love. They've been married now for 17 years at the point when Kate disappears. They have a 5-year-old little girl named Abby. Kate's been missing for 11 years. So we have two timelines here. In the current timeline, we are following the perspectives of Abby, the daughter, and also of Meredith, who is Scott's new wife. Meredith also has 2 sons that she's brought into this relationship. And then we have a past timeline where we're getting the perspective of Kate. And this is going to be similar in the fact that the past timeline is giving us the insight into this cult. The cult is Love International. And it's these people that have set up this like almost like shelter where they're just helping people out for free. They detox people and they give them whatever they need to survive just out of the kindness of their hearts. In the past timeline, Kate is just going back to work for the first time since having her daughter Abby, and she is a journalist of some kind. And so she is writing about this cult, and she goes in to interview them, where she meets Ray, who is our leader, our cult leader. One thing I've noticed off the bat is that the people in this cult, they're professionals, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they are a little bit older in scope. They're people probably in their 30s who have found success. Also, Kate, she's been in this marriage for 17 years at this point, also has the perfect life. And she admits it, I have the perfect life. I don't know why I'm so intrigued by this. So this is all adding up. This is making sense. And I wouldn't expect anything other than that from Lucinda Berry, because I know she's a psychologist and she understands trauma, she understands people. So I'm liking that so far. So when Kate shows back up after 11 years, Scott's remarried, everybody's moved on, they thought she's dead. She has aged ridiculously. She's malnourished, she's dehydrated. She also has a baby. A very young baby who is breastfeeding. How do you reintegrate her back into your life when you don't even know her anymore? You're remarried. Her daughter was 5 when her mom disappeared. She has no idea anything about her really other than like pictures, and she's finally gotten used to the idea of it just being her and her dad and his new wife. Meanwhile, in the past timeline, as she's interviewing these people in this cult, which they say is not a cult, but of course don't they always, she is becoming more intrigued. And in this article that she's writing, she's finding herself wanting to defend them. Everything in their space that they have this like operation set up, right? They have a building, a brick and mortar. Everything's gray. There's no color in anything. And the reasoning for that is so that people cannot get this artificial sense of spirituality from anything other than God. So they're religious. They don't believe in traditional drugs. When they rehab people, detox people, they just leave them in a room, like this small room, and they just let God's work happen. The leader, she clearly is attracted to, and where I'm at right now, she's doing this like cleansing session with him. So the cleansing session is interesting because I feel like that's what a lot of cults say about certain things, that's going to like change them as a person. It's this like spiritual thing. And she's like, well, they won't tell me what it is, like what actually they do in this cleansing session. Like, what is it? So I'm liking how this is going so far. I am curious that we're not getting the point of view of Scott. We're getting all of the women's point of view. So that's interesting. And we'll see how Kate fares in this current timeline where she is just like a shell of a human being. She hasn't opened up about anything about what happened. Nothing. We know nothing. Yeah, so far I'm interested. I may check in before the end, but I feel like that's probably all of the premise that I'm going to give away, because I don't want to spoil anything for you, but so far there hasn't been any spoilers. This kind of general getting to know what this story is about. But I might do one more check-in before the end. We'll see. Hello, it's later. I have listened to most of this book already today, and I have I have 57 minutes left on the audio. Not about exactly. But I feel like it's accumulating to something. I feel like the twist is coming, and I want to talk about it before I know what it is. So the twist on this one, I have seen so many different reactions to this reveal, this twist, whatever it is. at the end of this book, and I just know what's coming up. Some people I've seen really, really love this book up until this point and then just be furious. Other people have said that the twist is over the top. Other reviews I've seen have also said that the twist was boring and nothing. So I don't know what to expect at this point, but I'm nervous. There's a lot resting on this reveal, whatever it is. There are definitely some secrets going on. I'm really enjoying this. Like, I've flown through this so far today and also gotten a lot of other stuff done. So I'm really happy with this day. I feel productive. I'm nervous. I don't know where it's going. What you doing, Sealy? Okay, so I have finished When She Returned, and I have some thoughts. Unfortunately, I ended up landing on the side of not enjoying the ending. Oh, I felt like it was a little bit lackluster. I felt like it was a little bit unsatisfying. And on top of that, it made me feel like I couldn't trust my characters, but not in the way that lends to a good twist, in a way that's just sad. Like, it ended up just being really sad. But this is my subjective opinion. Objectively, did Lucinda Berry accomplish what she was trying to accomplish? And the answer is yes, like absolutely. She definitely gives us, there's some social commentary here about the insight on the true nature of cults. And as far as like this realistic cult atmosphere, yeah, she accomplished that, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the criteria that we set out in the beginning. As far as the ideology goes, she did a really great job of that, a lot better than the last one. There was a lot of use of God's will and scripture and cleansing ceremonies and retreats and things that you would expect. This really reminded me of Nixium, actually. Ways to break people down in order for them to feel spiritually connected while also being diverted from what is the truth of what is happening to them. And I feel like she was really successful in doing that. So as far as the ideology goes, I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. I thought she did a great job. Anytime anything went bad or went wrong, it was never the mistake on the part of this cult leader, Ray. It was always God's will. And so there was a complete diversion of culpability in that case and incredible manipulation. So moving on to our cult leader, Ray, even more so than the last book, I feel like Ray is exactly what I would think of when I think of somebody in this position that he was in. The power that he had, the control that he had over these people, even when they started to doubt him, he would find a way to inspire them and reel them back in a really realistic way, indoctrinate them and brainwash them. I thought Ray was definitely top tier cult leader, and for that I'm giving that 5 out of 5. And then lastly, the creep factor. So I personally was a little bit more creeped out by this one because of the whole scripture and using God's will. There was a lot of like breaking you down in order to make you connect to the spirit. A lot of using the phrases in the Bible in order to twist truths. For example, by saying that unless one is born again, they cannot see the kingdom. And so they are crushing them, breaking them down little by little, one at a time. So yeah, that was creepy. But overall, you know, was I incredibly affected by this? Not really. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. So in total for this book, we have, what is that? 12 out of 15. So technically based on the criteria that I have set out, this is higher ranking than Within These Walls. However, because of that ending, I think overall I enjoyed Within These Walls more than this one. Not that I think this is a bad book. I don't think it's a bad book. Just subjectively, it was not what I wanted for that ending. So that was a bit of a letdown for me. There were a lot of like really heartfelt moments in there too that I really didn't expect. The relationship between Abby and her mom, Kate, were just really pulled at my heartstrings. But yeah, ultimately this book was really sad. And it reminded me of Saving Noah in that way, that it's just like this like tragic story. And you build these connections with these characters to ultimately get let down. And so it's a bit unsatisfying as a reader, as someone who's going in wanting to get creeped out, wanting to get shocked by a twist. I expected there to be something more shocking. And though it did build up to this kind of action-packed ending, it just wasn't like, there was nothing that surprised me And so unfortunately, it didn't have that effect that I wanted it to have. So moving on, I have started reading The Last Housewife. I'm 12 chapters in, and we're just now starting to touch on the idea of a cult at all within the story. Up until chapter like 9 or 10, there was no mention of anything that could even be construed as being about a cult. But now we're just finally starting to get into it. I'm starting to see where this is going, and I'm scared. I've heard that this is dark. This is gonna trigger me. It's gonna trigger me. I can feel it coming. And I'm just at like the tip of the iceberg right now. But let me tell you what it's about. So we're following Shay. Shay lives in Dallas, which I did not know going into this. She lives in Highland Park, which if you are not from the Dallas area, you may not know, but Highland Park is a real part of Dallas. Dallas is kind of separated into like, almost like boroughs, like you would think of New York. Highland Park is one of them. That is where the rich people live. That is suburbia. It is where the kind of like Stepford wives, if there were true Dallasites, they live in Highland Park. And not to judge anyone that lives there, but like they're wealthy, they have money, they have time, they have this picturesque, perfect families. All of their little kids are gonna grow up and go to SMU, you know, and they're all gonna be doctors and lawyers and such. Yeah, it's really giving me an idea of where she lives right now. However, Shay did not grow up in that environment. She married into it when she married Cal, who has all the money and seems to be a little bit controlling. She even mentions that she feels like she is becoming a piece of art as opposed to an artist. She used to feel like she had some kind of purpose in life. Now she kind of feels like she's just going through the motions, like she is playing this part of this perfect wife. Everything seems perfect on the outside, but she's not really satisfied, which again is hitting those points that we're looking for somebody who would join a cult. She likes to listen to true crime podcasts, and there is one in particular, the host of which is someone she grew up friends with as a kid named Jamie. So she's listening one day, and Jamie happens to mention that someone that he knew through her, named Laurel, has died, and the police are saying that it was suicide, but he wants to investigate into it because he thinks potentially this is homicide, this is murder. She, of course, gets in contact with him and says, what? Like she hadn't known this, but she had been best friends with Laurel in college. Damn, cicadas. Anyway, when she was in college, she had two BFFs. One was Laurel and one was Clem. And Clem killed herself while they were still in college. And apparently they went through all of these things in college, which I'm assuming is when the cult thing comes in, that no one else really knows about. And so she is going back up to this college that I think they said it was in upstate New York. So she's gone back there to look into this with Jamie. And the college that they went to is known to be extremely progressive, full of Spitfire feminists. All three of these women lived together, but they also had another roommate. Her name was Rachel. And one day, Rachel wants them to meet her dad. Her dad is Don. He's going to be our cult leader. I just can tell already. She says that he looks like Don Draper. He's charismatic. He's like glowing. He's got this joie de vivre that she has this magnetism towards him that she cannot control. So he meets them. In their first meeting, he takes them out to this really fancy dinner. He wines and dines them. Starts talking about how women need to own their power. How he doesn't feel like the school that they're going to is really teaching them to take their power in any kind of real way. It's teaching them that in order to be successful in business, they have to basically emulate an alpha male in order to get what they want, and they shouldn't have to do that. They should be able to embrace the side of them that makes them truly who they are. And so they're like, wow, he is so forward thinking, and that's kind of how he pulls them into it. As we go into it, we realize, even though he framed it this way, I think what his actual beliefs are is a little bit different from these girls, but they've been kind of sucked into this. So really what he's preaching is that men and women have traditional roles, and that by embracing those traditional roles, it makes you powerful. He is citing all of these philosophers and great thinkers in the past and using that in order to exploit them and make them think that they need to be submissive in order to be powerful, and kind of confusing them over like, what is taking your own power back? Yeah, I think this is gonna trigger me, but That's what I asked for, right? This is the kind of shit that's scary to me. This is the fear factor that I'm afraid of. So I can definitely see where a lot of the things I've heard about this are coming from, about why it's so dark. But I'm really enjoying the writing style, and I'm definitely sucked into it. Like, I don't want to stop. I have to do other stuff right now. I have to, do some school stuff. School just started back. It's a whole other thing. But right now, like, I really just want to read this book, but I'm kind of terrified as to where this is going. There's one quote in there. So there's a lot of discussion about beauty. Women can use their beauty at times to not control, but like to feel that sense of power, right? If it makes certain men a little bit nervous around them, if they're intimidating. But also that beauty is the same thing that puts you in a position that makes you vulnerable. So this quote that I wrote down is, where is it? If only it was always like this. If beauty was purely a power and not a target, a vulnerability that can draw the wolves and put you at their mercy. So this is Shay saying that, like, she found herself in a position where that her beauty was working to her advantage. And she's saying, if only it didn't come along with this other thing that just like attracts the type of person that can hurt her. Kind of a poignant thought, and I feel like that's going to be a huge theme in this story. And that confusion about what actually does bring you power. There's this definite, like, indoctrination happening. I'm scared of it.
You just being the laziest boy ever? You want the belly rub?
Okay, I finished The Last Housewife, and I have so many feelings. I don't even know where to start. Let me tell you a few things about the way it's written that I didn't mention before we get into, the way we're rating this. The podcast element. There is a podcast element. That is also how we kind of get the backstory, but it's through interviews. It's not the actual podcast. It is Jamie recording Shay. And so in the book, you're getting transcripts. In the audiobook, you're not getting this like production quality of a podcast, which may have been the only thing that could have made this audiobook better for me, but otherwise the audiobook was incredible. A lot of the past information that we're getting is through Shay telling Jamie, as if he's interviewing her. And so you are getting their relationship, where he is a journalist, but he's also one of her best friends from when they were growing up. And so they have that blurred line there. And their relationship is really interesting as well. So not only do they find things out about Shay's past, but about their past and their relationship together as well. Did it trigger me? Yes, kind of. But I feel like that it did it in a way where I felt like there was hope. And so it didn't make me feel like hopeless, even though it was really dark. But also it could be that I'm getting better at kind of separating myself and being able to critique something in an objective way, which is what I've been trying to do. So I was able to kind of step outside of it. But what I really loved is all the social commentary in this book. It's really almost like a dystopia that just hits a little too close to home. Because this is like a sex cult, there's a lot of talk about the patriarchy and about women and our position in the world. So it's kind of a mirror on what's happening in real life, but with just a little bit of a different angle. Something that almost like Tender as the Flesh, where it's like hits a little too close to home, where you could see this happening one day, and it's terrifying. It really, really is terrifying. Let me read you a quote that Shay says that hit home for me. See if I can find it. Okay, here it is. Shay says, "The minute I turned 12, it was like I pressed a button and the machines inside my body started turning. I got my period, my breasts grew. Not small like other girls, but full and round, women's breasts. Everywhere I went, I kept my arms folded over my chest, trying to hide them. My body was mine before the change, but after, it belonged to everyone. Everywhere I went, men's heads turned. I couldn't go anywhere without it. It felt like a constant surveillance, and it reshaped me." So there's a lot of talk about like all of these experiences that we have as women. They're shaping us from the time we are little. We are essentially being indoctrinated by the patriarchy. I think that's what this book is trying to say. We are being indoctrinated from the second we as women are birthed into this world. Any little moment in our lives where somebody commented on our weight, or told us to smile, or told us that we would be prettier if we did this, or these little things that kind of seem like they don't amount to much, they build and they grow, and they are forming us and shaping us every single day. We are being shaped by the patriarchy. And I know I know what I sound like right now. But it's true. That then moves on to this conversation about consent. If you can't give consent when you're drunk because you're under the influence, can you give consent when you have been brainwashed? And if that's the case, how far does that go? Can we ever really give consent? And how do we claim our power? If it's our choice to be submissive or to behave in traditional female roles as women, if it's our choice, does that make it liberating? Does that make it freeing for us and in its own way become its own kind of feminism? Like me, for example, I have a traditional domestic role in my household. I take care of the house. I'm not working. My husband pays the bills. I stay home, but I'm going to school. I do plan on going back to work, but my point is this is my choice. By making this choice, am I internalizing misogyny? Or because I have a choice to do it, does that make it progressive? And that's kind of the whole thing about this book. Like this whole book revolves around that idea. Some people are saying that by being submissive, you're just being straightforward and honest about how the world works. By going against the way the world works, by going against the natural order of things, you're just living in denial. Because that's how it is. And if we are going to have to live in it anyway, why not take advantage of the system? Why not get what we want along the way? Is that liberating? It's a mind fuck. It is a mind fuck. Oh man. So if by you consenting by your own choice, by your own volition to play a submissive role, and if that choice gratifies somebody else for the sake of the fact that you are being submissive, are you using each other? Who has the power in that situation? Is the person who is gratified by you being submissive happy to let you think that you are claiming your power because they know they actually have the power? Is there more nuance to it than that? There's so much. Oh my gosh. There's also a lot of talk about Scheherazade, which I did not know what it was, so I looked it up. Scheherazade was a female in this Middle Eastern lore, from what I understand. The story is that there's a sultan, his wife cheats on him, and so he decides to get a new wife every single day and have them executed every single day, so he will never be cheated on. So every single day he gets a new wife, but Scheherazade comes in, and she marries him, and for whatever reason, he wants her, or I don't know the details of it, but she stops this from happening. And essentially she is like the martyr so that other women aren't getting executed every day. So that's kind of a theme of this as well, is kind of taking that martyrship and taking on that role. It was really good. It was really good, you guys. The writing is just as good as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. A lot of people that did not like In My Dreams I Hold a Knife are enjoying this. I think it's just as good. This one's more original. It has a lot more social commentary. It has more to say. Ashley Winstead is an autobi author for me at this point. Let's get to the rating scales. The ideology of this, spot on. Everything I could want as far as a cult goes, because it's actually talking about real life things that matter to us. And I absolutely believe the way that they were sucked into this. It's believable. So I'm giving it 5 out of 5. The cult leader for this. Tell you what, if Don Draper was the head of any cult, I can't see myself refusing him. I just can't. I think I would be sucked in just as easily. Yeah, and this guy was really warped. Just so warped. I gotta give it to Ashley Winstead for this. 5 out of 5 as well. Lastly, the fear factor. This scared the shit out of me. This book scared the shit out of me. It was dark, you guys. It was dark. I get it. I get what other people are saying about this now. The darkness comes more from because of the fact that it hits so close to home. It's so sinister and conniving in that way, which is what makes it that dark. It's 5 out of 5. It's 5 out of 5. This is 15 out of 15. This book wins. It's the best of all 3 of these, without a doubt. Without a doubt in my mind. So let's talk about my ratings for these books, like my actual ratings. What am I gonna put on Goodreads? Within These Walls, I think I'm gonna give this 3.5. That feels right for me. Better than average, not exactly my cup of tea, but I appreciate what it's doing. I liked Ania Ahlborn's character work. I loved the ending. I loved how she wrapped it up. Definitely recommend it. When She Returned, I think I'm gonna give this one a 3-star. I don't think it's a terrible book, and if it wasn't for that ending, this could have been a 5-star book. But if it wasn't for that, that just really, really made it not sit right with me. And I hate that. Some people really do love this book. Do not read this because I gave it 3 stars. I think some people are gonna really, really enjoy this book, but I just can't get there with it. So it has to be a 3-star for me. 3 stars I still recommend. That is not a bad rating for me. The Last Housewife, I'm like debating whether I should give this 4.5 stars or 5 stars. And the more I talk about it, the more I think I'm talking myself into just straight up giving it a 5-star rating. I think I have to. I think I have to give it a 5-star rating. Yeah, I think I'm going to. Okay, 5 stars it is then. What did I learn? Do I enjoy cult books? I think I do. I think I do like a cult book, and that might be kind of controversial because I feel like a lot of people don't, but I think I do. It's never too late to learn something about yourself. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. Well, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you all so much, as always. Let me know any other cult book recommendations that you might have for me. Put them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I assume you enjoyed at least part of this. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hung out. But I, again, appreciate you so much. And also, do not forget that life is short. So read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.